I'm Pete Hammond.
I'm Todd McCarthy.
And this is Take Two. And here, as promised, we are doing our wrap up here of Oscar season and everything that went on, everything, everywhere that happened this Oscar season. I was there at the Oscars. Here's the program right here. And Jimmy Kimmel, thank God, you know, it's a 3.5-hour show, leaves a box of food under every seat and a note that signed, isn't this a nice surprise, Jimmy? Donation of my name's been made to the LA Regional Food Bank, because after the show, all that unused food, everything that was left, all goes to the LA Regional Food Bank, too.
Well, did they put the food out there under the seats because they knew the show was going to last so long?
Yes, he did it. The last time he hosted, I was there, and he had lunch boxes that they did, and it was 9 pictures, and they had 9 Best Picture nominees on each lunch box, and I went around after and collected all these lunch boxes and took them into the Governor's Ball. I got about 6. I found the other 3 on eBay. But I was determined to get all of the lunch boxes. But anyway.
Are these really special lunch boxes?
Yeah, because they each had one Best Picture nominee from that year. Each one was different. Like I have Dunkirk, remember that movie, Christopher Nolan, all those. It's kind of cool. But yeah, nice program that they give you there for the awards. Anyway, here to analyze all of that and maybe look forward to what we're looking forward to in the future, maybe things we could fix about the Oscars that we don't like, that we looked on the show. The show ratings went up, I have to say, is a good thing.
I was really surprised because the shows in recent years have had some problems of all different kinds.
Oh, many problems.
To say the least. The awards aside, I thought it was a really good show.
It was, right?
In terms of the production. It moved along, even though it was long. It really kind of moved. There were not these long, boring, stupid things that they used to have once in a while. Right. And it was, for the most part, really, really well done, I thought.
Yeah.
So I was, even though it ran long, I thought it was just fine, and it was a pleasure to watch.
I think the reason for that is they stopped this year trying to put a film producer in as the producer of the show, like Steven Soderbergh or producer Will Packer, who works in movies, or many in the past. They've given the job to somebody different every year, generally.
Yeah.
And in the old days, they had Gil Cates, who did 14 of the shows, and he knew how to do that. So they got Glenn Weiss and Ricky Kirshner, who did the Tonys, the Emmys, the Olympics, all kinds of things. They're television producers. They know what it takes to do a television show, and that's what this is.
Unfortunately, though, there weren't what you might call silly sketches or silly moments, which has happened in the past with Oscars. But this one was, I didn't really have any problems with the show at all.
Yeah.
And some people were griping about this and that, but I think if you compare it to most of the shows, it's right up there as a very, very good one.
Yeah, and I heard Jimmy Kimmel. I think he's a great host for this. He reminds me of Billy Crystal or Johnny Carson or Bob Hope. He's there. You need a comedian, I'm absolutely convinced, to get through these shows.
It sure helps a lot.
And it helps a lot. He was a little edgy in different places, like doing an audience survey of whether Robert Blake should be in the In Memoriam reel, which I thought was interesting. But he was great, and he didn't go out and do his bits on the street this time, which he did the last couple of times he did. He said he wanted to keep it there. I think the key word here is traditional. They went back to the kind of traditional Oscar show that they've done for years.
But without some of the really silly and sometimes boring ones that they used to have.
Right, I know.
Even though the show was long, I didn't think there was anything bad or anything awful that really should have been discarded. So if you're into the Oscars at all, I think it was a very, very pleasant show.
So let's talk in terms of the movies, what made it work. And I have to say, I know what your opinion is of Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I have to say the sheer level of enthusiasm, of excitement of those winners was contagious. Jamie Lee Curtis and Ke Huy Quan and Michelle Yeoh, the directors, all of them first-timers, never even been nominated before, and that goes for Brendan Fraser too on this show. I thought that added something to this show to have these first-timers and not that kind of like, oh, it's Meryl Streep, it's my third or fourth, win or something like that.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There was some, very, very good films that would have made good film in every year, like All Quiet on the Western Front. And that was interesting to see break through the way it did. Obviously didn't win the big awards, but
Last week I predicted it would actually win this thing. I thought with the votes it would come in, and as the show was going on, I said, I'm going to be right. This thing's winning a lot of stuff.
That's
and
the way
you
it
can
looked for a
tell
while.
It was definitely number 2.
I think there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that would have been, a landmark kind of achievement, not just for Netflix, but for a remake.
Yeah, but I think it does show that the Academy is willing to take on something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's really not widely seen. I was sorry that Banshees of Inisherin didn't get anything.
I know.
And I think it deserved it in a couple of the categories anyway.
Oh, so, it's a great movie. This year, more than any other year, well, I'll show you by example. There were 5 nominees for Best Director. 4 of them did movies that didn't win a single Oscar that night, were completely wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And that included Triangle of Sadness, that included Tar, that included Banshees of Inisherin, and one other one too. But they were all wiped out in terms of wins on the show, which is like crazy.
What category surprised you the most with its winner?
The thing that surprised me the most was that there were no surprises to me. I mean, this was the way pundits saw this going. When I made my predictions, I was trying to will some surprises, trying to see it. But the Oscars sort of followed the pack. They followed all the guilds. The guilds called it, okay? Directors Guild voted Everything Everywhere. Writers Guild got both right, and that's with having certain scripts eliminated because of eligibility. Like Banshees wasn't even eligible there, so you couldn't vote if you're in the Writers Guild like I am, or All Quiet wasn't eligible. They went with Women Talking. They went with Everything Everywhere. They were right on both counts. SAG, their cast thing, and all 4 SAG acting winners won at the Oscars too. Producers Guild, Everything Everywhere, again, very predictive. The industry signaled it to us before. We didn't even have to watch the Oscars. We knew the way they were going to go.
So it's a good thing they put on a good show.
Because, wow, they really, this is getting too predictable in terms of all these precursor shows and everything. I have an idea. I was actually throwing it around the governor's ball, too. Why not move the calendar around and let the Oscars go first? Let's see what they'd vote for then.
All right. Well, let's take that further. If that, I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
And what actually would be preventing that from happening?
Well, I think if you did pick a date, like way early, or the other shows would find a way to go in front of you.
They would sure try.
Because they are all feeding off the Oscars.
Yeah, and a lot of those films are released very late, and people are catching up with them all through the Christmas and New Year's period.
Right. Yeah.
And then the stray ones that you haven't even seen, you still want to see if you're going to vote seriously. So.
And the problem is the Academy members don't even have time to watch these movies now. I talked to Tom Bernard from Sony Pictures Classics at the Governor's Ball, and he said, well, all this proved to me is they weren't watching all the movies, because look at what won. Everything Everywhere All at Once won 7. All Quiet on the Western Front won 4, and The Whale won 2. Those are the only 3 movies that got more than 1 Oscar. Only 3. Now, in past years, we've had 7 or 8 of them actually get multiple prizes. So it's kind of, and then to have 5 movies that are nominated for Best Picture blank at the Oscars, and that also included Elvis as well.
That was mildly surprising.
Yeah, because I sort of thought Austin Butler might pull it out. They usually go for the guys playing well-known people.
Yeah.
But SAG went with Brendan Fraser, and so did the Oscars. And I think it was looked at by most voters that saw it as a real challenging role, what he had to go through in winning that.
Speaking of a great role, I'm still kind of surprised by Cate Blanchett, because that was such a great performance.
She was the front runner from the minute that screened at Venice.
Yeah.
I know. I remember we talked about it and everything, and at Telluride, she knew it. She went all the way, and then sometimes momentum. I've always said this, momentum is everything. And Michelle Yeoh picked it up right at the right moment and took.
But how did that happen?
There was a lot of talk that this would be historic. No Asian woman has ever won Best Actress. In fact, no woman of color except for Halle Berry in 90 years of the Oscars. And I think that took hold. But I also think the movie just gained all this momentum. And remember, This movie debuted a solid year ago.
I know.
South by Southwest is going on right now. South by Southwest is where that movie debuted, the first movie ever to come out of that film festival and win Best Picture. But I think it just sort of went away, or it was always there, but all these other movies would open and they'd be the hot one of the week or two. And then in the end, when it finally came down to the Oscar voters, they looked at what was happening with the industry votes and things. Because let's go back and look at the Golden Globes. They picked the Banshees of Inisherin and the Fabelmans. And the Fabelmans won in Toronto. It was the front runner.
That's right.
And Top Gun won the National Board of Review. This movie wasn't even in the conversation at that point, except for Ke Huy Quan, who was winning everything in supporting. But other than that, it didn't pick it up until the Critics' Choice Awards, which I'm in, and we gave it 5 awards, including Best Picture.
But why should that significantly influence the Oscars away from what they had originally been
They're very
enthusiastic about?
influenced. They're very influenced by what they read. They want to be with a winner.
Yeah, but so many of those other groups had already chosen other films.
Yeah, I know. But those films, then they watch them, and then maybe they go like Tar. You know, Tar's a great movie. It's too long, but it's a great movie. And I talked to a lot of people, and I just couldn't get into Tar. You know, I think that hurt Kate Blanchett ultimately there too. She wasn't with a winner. That movie won nothing. You know, and it won all the Critics Awards. It won L.A. Critics. It won New York Critics.
Oh,
it won
tell me about
National
it. Of course.
Society. That was your Critics winner.
She looked like
this year.
the biggest shoe-in of the whole group initially.
But that couldn't translate ultimately to the Oscars. Look at what's been happening in recent years. Coda has an emotional hook. This movie, Everything, has an emotional hook. Green Book has an emotional hook. That always trumps everything. And so you may have an intellectual movie like Tar and things like that, but it's difficult to hug, you know, and you're seeing how voters are still voting, even with the voting membership changing.
Well, but I think some of those winners, you know, it reflects perhaps a different view of what the Oscar, you know, voters are going to pick.
Yeah.
Because before, I think you would have gotten some of those more serious ones. If something was really installed, you know, as a period film, it's a series that would go on and win. It wouldn't get upset by this, except maybe in recent years,
Right.
where some of these unexpected films like Green Book and like, well, I one that sticks in my mind is Crash and so on. These films that sneak in a way.
That came in at the last minute too, Crash,
Yeah.
no question.
So it's a tricky thing. I mean, that's not always going to work. But I think if that film, either of those films had come out 6 months earlier, they wouldn't have been thought of in this way.
That's
So
why
there's
I
so
want the
much-
Oscar voters to vote first.
Well, that would be lovely to come back.
I
Now,
would-
is there any way, even if you couldn't pull that off 100%, is there some way that you could push the Oscars earlier, or is it just too cumbersome to get everyone to see the films in time to
I
vote?
think that what you just said, it's too cumbersome to get them to sit down and watch these movies. It is now too. They have the digital platform; they can watch them at
Yeah.
home and everything. But you know, with the industry's release schedule and the way it goes all the way to December, it's almost impossible unless you're going to push everything. And the problem now is really seriously, there's too many award shows. There's just too many people hopping on the bandwagon. It's financially valuable for a lot of these places, and so this season is 6 months long. If you start in Cannes, it's 9 months long. This is a long time to be on the road and to keep it going. And that's why the momentum is so important as you go along. You don't want to be the front runner. You don't want to be the Fabelmans. You do not want to
That's
be in
just
that
it.
position.
Same thing with Green Book and some of the other films. They peak too early. Why they peak early and don't hold their position
Yeah.
is another
Yeah,
question.
well, Green Book came on, and Roma peaked too early, and that beat Roma, you know. But it was, nevertheless, it is a proven thing now. I mean, anybody that's a front runner, they should just go and kill themselves because that's not what you want to be. It's really interesting to me the way the seasons have changed and the Oscars have changed. Here's another thing. It's become a social media thing. It's, you know, there is so much talk. There are so many people predicting it. There are so many people who are making money off of this. It's overdone, you know, and everybody's trying to be an influencer. In the old days with the Oscars, there were just the Golden Globes that came
For
before.
the critics groups and the Golden Globes.
Yeah, and the industry awards didn't even start until the late 40s. So
All right, so you have, since this is your desire
Yes.
that this could change. Is there some way you think you could get it so it doesn't do what you're talking about and get the Oscars to be more upfront in the schedule?
It would require the industry with their release schedules of these movies to play ball with it. And it would have to change the whole thing. That's why I'm saying it's a very difficult proposition to do it. I don't know how you get around it unless you ban all these groups and they all get together. I actually talked to someone who's one of the leaders of the Producers Guild this year who wants to change the way award season goes, but I don't know what kind of success they're going to have. And I have to say, we're sitting here at PMC, which owns Variety and The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and a lot of Gold Derby and IndieWire, all of them, you know, depend on award season for advertising as well. And so it's a business. There's no question it's a business, and it would be very hard to take all that away. I'm just talking in the purest sense of the word, like just like it was in the old days. You'd get these off-the-wall nominations, people would see them, they'd have time. The Oscars were in April. Nobody seemed to care that when they moved it to February, it was because of rating sweeps and things. The Academy, you know, fell prey to this too by moving it so much earlier and putting the pressure on them to watch things. And so what do? They watch the things that are winning at the other shows. And and that's why you had this sweep here going on, just as voting was going on. All these guild shows were going on. The only one that was out of line with the Oscars was BAFTA, and they've been wrong now 8 out of the last 9 years.
Well.
The only one they got right was Nomadland because there was no other movies that year.
That's right.
It's interesting. So, you know, the Oscars are important, though. They bring attention to these movies. They used to be, they brought a lot of money in. You could make $50 million off a Best Picture. Now, this movie's been out for a year, and it's not going to make a whole lot of money off its Oscar wins. Maybe down the line in ancillaries, as they call it.
Well, sure, but yeah.
But it's very tough now to go the way it used to be of how much is an Oscar worth and things.
Yeah, which makes the prognostications that you and other people do kind of tricky because, you know, when is that changing? When is the temperature in some films going down and some going up?
Yeah.
I don't know how you take the pulse of that every 3 days, you know.
Well, you can really feel it. I mean, look, even though I predicted, because I thought of their voting system, All Quiet on the Western Front could benefit, and I think it did. I wouldn't take that back. I think I was right in theory, and you could see what it was winning, but this Everything Everywhere became an overwhelming proposition with all the guilds and everything. So everybody who predicts stuff predicted that would win Best Picture. No surprise.
Yeah.
No surprise.
But so looking back a few years to some of the films that did win that were kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
Take Crash, for instance, which I don't think anyone today would say was the best film of that year or much
Well, it
great
beat
film.
Brokeback Mountain.
Okay, but so my question is then, how did that peak and how did that win when no one today would even think it's in the top 10 of the year?
Where's my camera? I know how. I know how this happened. The guy behind that campaign, a guy named Tom Ortenberg, who was at Lionsgate, told me point blank, they were an underdog. He said, but all I have to do is win one of these guilds. If I get one guild, I get the momentum and I can take it. And you know what happened? He lost all the guilds except SAG. And they won that big cast award. They were all at SAG.
Yeah.
That started it for that movie, and it went all the way. And people were surprised, but he knew all you had to do was break, you know, one of these movies. That's all that needed to happen this year too. If something would have broken at the Producers Guild and it wasn't Everything Everywhere, you would have seen a shift in that momentum. But instead, what you got was, oh, it's going to win no matter what now.
Yeah.
And there was that attitude. And I think a lot of voters just sort of check it off. I don't think they've seen all of these movies like we have. We have to. But I don't think they've seen these movies, so they look at the ones that get the most attention.
I wonder if in the old days, when there was no even TV and certainly not video or anything like that, the constituency would have to go to a cinema to watch a film. I'm talking about from the 30s up through the 60s. Right. Finally, when TV came in and was showing movies soon enough, then it could change. But I wonder if that's changed anything. If the fact that you had to go out and make an evening out of seeing a certain film.
That's right.
If the fluctuations could be as subtle and as kind of intricate as what you just described.
Yeah.
or whether the fact that everyone had to see it under the same circumstances at the same time
Possible.
might have changed the
You know,
outlook
it's
about it.
possible. This isn't the first time a movie's opened early in the year and gone on to win Best Picture. You know, it used to happen. The Sound of Music did it, but that played in one theater for a year
That
and
was
a
still
half.
playing when the Oscars, and then
Patton
after
did it. That was
Yeah.
playing in one theater. You know, Silence of the Lambs, you know, opened on Valentine's Day that year, and they revived that. They brought that back. That was at the beginning of all these kind of a different kind of campaigning going on. Harvey Weinstein changed Oscars forever, you know, with his relentless campaigning and that sort of thing.
That's for sure.
Too. So it's very difficult to target, you know, a movie that everyone's going to see at some point and realize the quality of it, and that's just going to happen. That's a pipe dream, I think. And you know, and it might have helped Everything Everywhere to have been around for as long as it was. There was every opportunity over the course of a year to see that movie.
That's true.
You know, and you know, look, some of the nominees too, like Elvis and Top Gun. They came out in the first half of the year too, but they were big, massive hits. This year, I want to say for the Oscars, it's important to say, they nominated these popular movies.
Yep, they did.
Top Gun, Avatar, Elvis, even Everything Everywhere was a very big hit for a small kind of movie that it was. And so there was audience interest and a rooting interest in it, and I think they should look at the whole waterfront here. Of these kind of movies out there and then thumbing their nose at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good. You know, it was interesting too. I could tell you, to give you one example of a campaign that went south, Angela Bassett in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, won at the Golden Globes, won at the Critics' Choice. She was winning these supporting actress awards and it looked like she was sailing. Veteran, way overdue, got robbed for playing Tina Turner, should have won then. This is her chance. All of a sudden, there were all these articles out there. Angela Bassett's going to be the first winner ever from a Marvel film. The first actor ever to win for a Marvel film. I think that killed her campaign. All of a sudden, they're looking, a Marvel film? No. We can't have that. And you saw it, the whole industry. She lost at BAFTA, she lost at SAG, and then she lost the Oscar. So then you had Jamie Lee Curtis just like walk right through the door.
Yeah, the one I was really sorry to see lose was Cate Blanchett, because she's so great in that film. It's like the culmination role. I mean, and no one could have played it as brilliantly as she
Cry
did.
tears over her 2 Oscars, Todd.
Even so. I deserve it and saluting the best.
I know. Now let's just look a little forward here. This is the end of the season. We're in a kind of fallow period here where the movies are, you know, like Dungeons and Dragons and the one I saw last night, Shazam. And, you know, it's not Oscar material and things. It gets a little depressing for critics, you know, after
Oh,
this.
there's lulls, that's for sure. Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to?
Ooh.
You're looking forward to going forward here? And
Well, I saw those Mission Impossible trailers,
yeah.
and every time he's outdoing himself from the last film, which is pretty tough at this point.
You know, there's some that are coming out that I'm looking forward to, like Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon.
Well, when is that coming out? Yeah.
It is coming out this year, and
Oh,
I
sure.
think it could turn up at Cannes. And I ran into, actually, they were talking to each other. It was the guy from Apple, which is financed it, and the guy from Paramount, which is releasing it in theaters domestically. So it's not a streaming movie in the traditional nature of, you know, just because Apple did it. Paramount's got it, which is why it could go to Cannes and get around those French rules, which say, you know, you have to play in theaters.
Yeah, that's been weakened, I think.
I hear it's a masterpiece, but I often say this. I often say, I hear it's a masterpiece, and then sometimes it isn't. But I think it's well over 3 hours. I asked them how long.
It is. I think it's closer to 4.
Yeah. So they wouldn't say, but they said it doesn't matter that you don't feel that. And so we have that.
It's a grim story, though.
Yeah.
If you've read the book, it's very grim. So.
But it's got Leonardo DiCaprio.
It's got the cast,
Robert De Niro. I can see the ads now, actually. Speaking of Oscars, it's going to be Academy Award winner Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Academy Award winner Leonardo DiCaprio, Academy Award winner Robert De Niro, Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser, because he's in it too. And so we're going to look for that. And then Ridley Scott. This man has been ignored by the Oscars. He even produced, directed the Best Picture
And
of
he didn't get it.
2000, but
Yeah.
he didn't get the director award. That was Gladiator. And he
Yep.
wasn't a producer on it, so he didn't get the Oscar. He's got Napoleon and Josephine, and that's with Joaquin Phoenix. And I from everything I can tell, and again, that's another Apple. Apple's got big movies
Yeah.
next year. That one is something to look forward to. Netflix has some very interesting movies too, including the Leonard Bernstein film with
That's right.
Bradley Cooper. I mean, we can tell. We'll sit here in September and have something to talk about. But
I should think before that, but by Cannes, which isn't too far off. So
Cannes
Yeah.
is happening in May. Looks like it could be interesting. I know Terry Fremeau, who programs it, was here in Hollywood frantically trying to get movies to commit to that. The only problem with Cannes is they feel like, oh, it's 9 months before the Oscars. What are we going to do? But Parasite proved them wrong when that won finally. And
yeah, and it's the earlier in Cannes, years past, that's the films have won Oscars too.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the question.
Well, there's a lot to look forward to. I do agree with Todd. I thought this was the best Oscar show in a while, in a long while, and I think the reviews also said that, and that's a good thing. I'm happy the audience is slowly coming back to the Oscars, because where would we be without them? This is our season finale, and so we've had a really good time talking about all this stuff over the past few months. We'll be back, but for now, it's goodbye. I'm Pete Hammond.
I'm Todd McCarthy.
And this has been Take Two.